December 1941, there was a temporary lull in Australia's war on land. The New Zealanders were still with the victorious army of the...
World War II, Alexandria, Egypt. Carl Carrigan, his brother Paul, and their friend Lloyd Everingham were captured there by the Germans and taken to various prisoner of war camps in Italy, ending up in northern Italy and escaping into Switzerland. Carl went on to survive the war and bring up 10 children in New England and Australia. Now, his daughter Cate is leading a group to retrace the escapee's journey, together with oldest brother Michael, middle sister Jane, and younger sister Carmel, as well as their partners. In Sydney, Cate and Carmel are discussing the planned trip before departure.
Most of the Australians and the New Zealanders that were with Dad were sent off to a place near Bolzano.
Carl escaped from a prison farm near Vercelli to make his way north to Switzerland. The retracing begins in Verona with a day trip to Bolzano. From there, the group are to travel to Cividale and Friuli, from where they will visit Rubignano. They will then travel to Vercelli, near the farm from which Carl escaped in Selve, and then follow his steps to the Macugnaga Valley, from where he entered Switzerland over Mount Rosa. Cate's family will end the adventure in Geneva, Switzerland.
They were marched from Vercelli out to the farms.
Oh, but were they were working on the farms during the day, but were they actually locked up at, was there like a prisoner of war camp where they were based, or were they staying on the farms?
There were different farms, but they were guarded.
Oh, so they were guarded at Selve, and then they would march from Selve.
There were different camps around there. They weren't all at the one place.
Right.
So they were sent out to different farm camps. Dad was in one called 106/11.
Right.
So they were all 106 in that region, but they were different camps around different farms, I take it. I don't know a lot of them, but they worked for the farmers, the padrone.
Yeah.
And they had to march out each day and work there. And they were there when the word came through that the armistice had been signed. Okay. So the Italians were no longer in the war.
Oh.
And that was their opportunity then to get out. But the Germans were strongly around there. The presence was strong. There was a lot of confusion at the time, but they took their opportunity, as did a lot of others. It was the biggest mass breakout of the Second World War. There were lots of different Australians and Anzacs who were doing this at the same time. And in fact, Katrina Kittle, who I got in contact with 2 years ago now, she is following the same journey that her father took and got over the Alps into Switzerland on the same day as Dad.
Right.
Cate catches up with Katrina at the airport just before Katrina leaves.
So Katrina, it's incredible that both of our fathers got over on the 4th of October 1943.
This photo includes a large group of men who got in about the same time as our fathers. We believe it was taken 7th of October.
So just 3 days after they got in?
Yes, and my father was here with his mate Peter to his right, and the South African that travelled with him to his left. Now your father is there?
There's Dad, and there's his brother Paul, Lloyd Lettingham, and Ron Fitzgerald's in there too.
Okay, and there's several other men I'm aware of. I've read their stories. Ron Maitland from West Australia, Nick Emery, who was only 17 when he became a POW, Strickland brothers. I know 3 men there who married Swiss brides.
Well, they look very happy and very content.
I love that photo because they've got new battle dress issued, they've got new boots issued, they're smiling, they've got new haircuts. They must feel $1 million. So in a couple of hours I'm off. First time to Europe, following Dad's footsteps. He would have gone through Rome. I'm going up to Udine, to the site of the camp. Then we're going to travel west to Vercelli, from where he escaped. Then we're going to actually head up north to Domus Casola and Marciunaia, and then cross the Alps and follow his journey to Switzerland.
Well, we'll be hot on your heels. We'll be doing the same trip, and I'll be looking out for signs of your presence.
Before beginning their travels, Cate and her family get together in Rome.
This fountain in 1580.
I'm along for the trip as Carmel's husband and try my hand at giving a guided tour of the Eternal City.
The plan was that the water, you see the 4 turtles around, and this is now a duplicate, the original's in
But the real adventure starts in Verona.
Today we're headed to Bolzano in the Brenner Pass region of northern Italy. Now Dad was sent here after being held initially in a camp outside of Naples and then one outside of Roma, and I'm feeling quite emotional today because we're getting closer to the real experience that he had as a POW in Italy. Try to find the remains of the camp in Bolzano where Dad was held with the other men. From talking to the locals here, it doesn't seem that many people know of it, and we're trying to find a place. The taxi driver's not sure where we're going, but we're trying to find a place where we think there's a photographic record and remains of at least a wall from a POW camp. Well, we've come here to Bolzano. The taxi driver didn't know the camp where Dad was actually held, or the tourist information didn't know, but they did direct us to this place, which is a record of the deportation centre for the Jewish people in 1944 here in Bolzano. And there's a photographic record of what happened to them. They were brought in here, deportees. Some were sent on, I think, to Germany. People died here. So it's not where Dad was, but it is an historic record of that time and the suffering of other people in the Second World War here in Bolzano.
After a day trip to Bolzano, Cate and her family travelled to Cividale del Friuli, a small town not far from the Slovenian border. It was near here, at Grupignano, where Campo 57 held Australian and other prisoners of war. Cate was aware that her father, Carl, had helped build a chapel there, and Katrina, travelling a few days ahead, has emailed Cate to tell her that the back of the crucifix at the chapel was signed by all the POWs that worked on it, including Carl.
In the town of Cividale, and we're about to be taken out by our guide Erica to the site of Campo 57 where Dad and his mates were held for 18 months, and there's a Catholic chapel out there that the POWs helped to build, so we're hoping to see Dad's signature on the back of the cross. Well, here we are. We made it to Campo 57 after a long and a little bit frustrating trip, but we're here to see the chapel that Dad helped build, along with the crucifix that he signed that the prisoners made, and what's left of Campo 57.
All'inizio c'erano le tende,
beginning there were tents,
e poi le baracche.
then huts, wooden huts.
Abbiamo detto che nel momento di massima affollamento c'erano oltre 4.600.
So the peak was like 400 and 600 prisoners.
Perché il campo era veramente grande.
The highest number of people here. 4,000. 4,600.
Per la realizzazione del campo ovviamente sono stati espropriati per
in order to build the camp, the citizens, the locals had to go away to leave their houses because soldiers took everything, took all the land in the area.
Alla fine della guerra sono stati gestiti i tecnici.
And at the end of the war, everybody got back their own house.
Il proprietario del terreno su cui è stata costruita.
So the owner of the land where the church lies said, what can I do now that the church is here? And so donated the church to the town hall of Campo. So now the owner is
Il comune di Campo non ha fatto
unfortunately, the town hall has never taken care of the place.
E ovviamente all'inizio ci tempo.
So with time, the church was damaged.
Le fotografie dimostrano che c'era una vegetazione spontanea.
So there was grass, so nature got in
Gerald's diary where he talks about POWs, 19 POWs escaping through a tunnel.
Yes, just a,
All out of a hut.
Sì.
All out of huts all day, big
Ci sono
surge.
state due tentativi di fuga documentati.
Two escapes. They tried twice.
La prima volta due che
One,
scavalcarono
first time
il
two
reticolato
tried
e furono
to go past the wire, the barbed wire, and one was
le guardie gli spararono.
no, not killed, injured.
Mm-hmm.
One was injured, but they caught them.
Yeah.
E poi invece fecero un tunnel
And then the
sotto
second
la,
time they tried
la
to
recinzione
dig a tunnel under
e scapparono in 19.
and 19 of them escaped that time.
Però anche quelli furono
but they were
ripresi
caught as
praticamente.
well.
Carl Carrigan, he talks about it. Two more recaptured. Then the next day, two more recaptured. The following day, two more, three more.
Yeah.
6 shots. Well, 6 shots POW brought him wounded in face.
Yeah.
Ma chi è che ha scritto questo?
Carl, Paul, Lloyd, Ron, and all the POWs. Whoever came through this place.
And to Angie
A tutti quanti voi.
for looking after. Ron Fitzgerald, Ron McIntyre.
The POWs at Campo 57 in Bolzano were asked if they knew anything about farming. Carl was one of many farmers who, according to the diary of Ron Fitzgerald, moved to a rice farm called Selve near Vercelli.
Well, we came out to Selve from Vercelli not knowing what to expect, pulled in at this farm, asked the farmer, Carlo, if he knew anything about it, and he said Australians were based here. So we think this is where Dad was based when he worked on the farms at Vercelli, which is incredible.
Quando glielo chiediamo lei cerca di raccontare poco perché his mother was actually 20 during the war and would know a lot, but she's not here anyway, but also she never talks about it.
E qui avevano fatto, perché mia nonna me l'aveva raccontato, avevano fatto una specie di recinto qui su Steyr, che c'erano i prigionieri.
See? It turns out that Carlo's mother cooked for the prisoners who ate in this room. From here, they worked in the local rice farms until the fall of Mussolini. The war ended, they just fed the prisoners, and then the prisoners had to get out quickly because you didn't know who was going to support who. So you just got out, and it was a real chaos.
Lui non guardava in faccia, lui se c'era da aiutare.
So his grandfather helped the prisoners, but the other half of the family, the cousins, didn't. So it split the family. Because then they wouldn't have people to work on the farms.
Oh, we're at the farm at Selve, where Dad worked during the war, and we found this dustpan, which is very similar to one that Dad made. So maybe he got the idea here when he was in Selve.
Tamburina, and they slept here. They sheltered for a couple of nights, and this is Tamburina. So
Fantastic.
we think, don't we? We think this is where Dad was for a couple of nights.
While they were thinking about what to do.
Yes, that's right. Where next to go?
And they would then walk back and work the fields still?
Yes.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. And the Germans were coming very close now.
Yes.
Meeting Carlo was one of the most unexpected moments of the journey. Hundreds of escaping POWs arranged to meet in the woods partway on their journey north at Bielle, overlooking Lake Orte. It is here that Carl, Ron and Paul decided to form a team of 3 to walk the less well-known tracks and paths and through the woods as they headed north.
Today's the 25th of September, and we've been travelling around the area of Biella, which is an area that Dad went through when he was escaping. And we've just come across this track up through this hillside, which would have been typical of the mountain tracks that Dad walked along with his mates to escape the Germans.
We are nearing the end of our journey as we travel by train the distance that Carl, Ron and Paul walked over 7 days up the Macugnaga Valley to where they were to meet a young guide to take them the final distance of their own journey.
We left this morning from Vercelli, where we'd seen the rice farm where Dad was based, was pretty amazing. And today we're heading up into the mountains to the Macugnaga Valley, and it's near Mount Moro, where Dad crossed over with the others into Switzerland. And it's incredible country. I'm just looking out the window. We're looking at soaring mountains now here. We're very close to the Swiss border, and it's just extraordinary that they were able to do this. It really is. It's mind-blowing, and we're all just pretty blown away, I think, at this moment at what they achieved. Arrived now, Matt, at Macugnaga. We're staying in a hotel here. We're looking out from our hotel at Monte Rosa, and over to the right from our balcony we see Monte Moro, where Dad and his friends, his brother and his two friends, passed over on the 4th of October 1943. And we've just been greeted by all these people who say they know guides who took prisoners over, who held prisoners, and they're taking us around the town trying to find somebody who can talk to us about that time.
We are taken to a nearby shop managed by this woman in her 90s who remembers POWs coming through the Macugnaga Valley at about the time that Carl was there nearly every day, and is discussing whether any of the mountain guides at the time may still be around. And she's trying to remember the names of people who have come to And while people in the area were keen to help the escaping POWs, they were not always fond of the Italian partisans.
Because they kill a lot of people, they were like a rabbi, the partisans. And many people that, I know our age, that they got the money is because when we talk with someone, they say, oh yes, of course they got the money. Because the bust of her dad, there was a partisan, it was sticking there, it was sticking there. So really, here they hate. They
so that's that guy.
Here they see a partisan, they are pleased if they see on the road dead, they go party. Yeah, they don't like it, especially the old people. They were, but because they had, they were basically rabbi, there is a war, so you go there everywhere, you steal, you manage to steal at the end of the war, you got some money.
Carl's journey became more and more treacherous as he approached the mountains.
So this sign shows that the pass over Mount Turlough is about 5 hours this direction. Isn't that where Dad crossed?
That's exactly right. He came through the Turlough Pass, and up here we see the Corazza Valley. They also came via the Corazza Valley. They met a guide there, a young teenage guide, who directed them up over Mount Moro, and this is a sign to Macugnaga, and that's basically where Mount Moro is. And we hear in the background the sound of the Macugnaga River. Now, on the night they crossed, luckily there were no German guards on the bridge, so they were able to cross without getting their feet wet and freezing.
While Ron, Paul and Carl had to climb up Mount Moro, we had the luxury of a cable car.
We're on our way up to the Mount Moro Pass. We've got a cable car down from the Macugnaga, where we're staying, and we're heading up to Mount Moro now. It's very steep descent, and Mount Moro is where Dad and the others passed into Switzerland. But we're looking at it, the sort of tracks Dad and the others would have walked up to get up to the Mount Moro Pass. As you can see, very steep, and so we've seen some that traverse across the terrain, as we suppose they use those to make their way up higher and higher to the pass.
We reached the snow line, and while the kids play in the snow, Cate and her sister Jane decide to make the final walk to the top of the mountain and the Swiss border.
just come back from walking up to the Mount Morrow Pass, which is designated by the Madonna, and over the other side of the Madonna is Switzerland. So that's where they crossed over, and it's quite amazing to get up there and do it. And just see what they did. Incredible.
The luxurious Swiss train proves to be a much more comfortable way for us to travel to Geneva, where again I get the chance to be the local guide.
And there's a woman looking out her window near Feuillon, and she's cooking vegetable soup in her pot. And she sees the soldiers climbing up the ladder down below her window. So she pours the vegetable soup, 1602, 11th of December, about 10, 11 p.m. over their heads. They scream at being burnt. The alarm is raised, and the Swiss fight off the Savoyards. And from that moment, 11th of December 1602, Geneva has now fought its way to its total independence and republicanism which remains.
Carl and the other POWs had a reasonably comfortable time for the rest of their duration in Switzerland.
We're here at the Museum of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Geneva. This is the end of our official trip following our father's footsteps in World War II. The Red Cross did an amazing job during the war in providing food parcels which really did sustain the prisoners and keep them alive. They often were things that came in those food parcels that really were essential to them to supplement the meagre food that they were given. So we've travelled, we went to Italy, we travelled to the camps where Dad was held, saw a cross in a chapel, a Catholic chapel that was built by the POWs, including Dad. We went to Vercelli, to the rice farms where he was held a prisoner, and then we followed his trek up through when he escaped after the armistice in September 1943. We followed his steps up through the mountains and over Mount Morrow Pass into Switzerland. So this is the end of it now. It's been an incredibly emotional time. It's been wonderful for myself and my siblings and our family members. And I think it's apt that we stop at the Red Cross, given the major role the Red Cross played.
Yep, you're going.
So he was in like near Rome. They sorted them into.
Okay, if you two can be talking to each other, look at each other like you were before. What are you doing? I don't know. Can you just be talking to each other? I'm filming. I'm going to get you help with that voice thing. Yeah. Kate. So Katrina, you're done. No, I'm not. Right now.
Don't do it that loud.
Let's go.
So Katrina.
In the hole.
Yeah, POW.
Only for 5.
Not Sunday. No, 10.
Kate, do you want to walk towards the camera and tell us what we do?
What about Michael?
Okay, all right. Where the hell is she? Where's Kate?
Okay, so I'm dragging you.
No, I'll have to do that again, sorry. I bumped. Rib up.